Welcome back to another powerful episode of the Global Transformation Forum podcast, and I am your host, Dr. Vivian Atud. And today we are stepping into one of my favorite topics, African women in global leadership. Because let me tell you, when African women rise, nations rise. So you might want to ask me, Dr. Atud, let me ask you directly, are African women truly stepping into global leadership? Yes, but the rise is both inspiring and insufficient. African women are leaders, not future leaders, current leaders, but the world hasn't fully caught up to that reality. So let me share a moment that I'll never forget. Many years ago, during one of my consulting assignments, I met a woman CEO of a manufacturing firm in East Africa, and everyone called her Mama Steel. Why? Because she ran a steel company with a level of compassion and firmness. And guess what? She said to me, when women lead, we don't just build factories, we build communities. That stayed with me. African women lead with a heart, but also with power. So the question is, you might want to ask me, give me some names, Dr. Atud. Who are these African women leading in the global spaces? And one name that comes to mind, and undeniably so, is Dr. Ngozi of Nigeria, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the first African and first woman who is Director General of the WTO. I mean, the list continue. I mean, you can look at the President of Tanzania. You can look at Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former President and Nobel Prize laureate. You can look at Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, a global literary icon, and countless women, CEOs, ministers, judges, scientists, inventors. African women are no longer asking for space. They are taking spaces. So the question is, there are three distinct traits that make women, African women, powerful leaders. Number one is resilience. African women are trained by life to survive and to excel. I mean, if you grew up in Africa like I did, I mean, there is one thing that you would go through is resilience, because the circumstances under which we go to school, whether you are climbing mountains or crossing rivers or walking barefoot as it was in the day and doing all kinds, you would learn resilience by the realities of the day. Another thing that differentiates African leaders is community-minded leadership. Ubuntu, I am because we are raised by communities. To say an African child is raised by a community, not just by mom and dad, but by the community, neighbors, friends, the extended family. An African child, once born, they say it's everybody's child. And number three is multi-dimensional intelligence. African women lead with intellect, they lead with empathy, they lead with intuition, and they lead with strategy. So the question is, I can share with you some examples of things that I have seen. Once I facilitated a boardroom meeting where two women executives sat quietly while the men debated loudly, and suddenly one woman leaned forward and said, "Gentlemen, if we spent half the time solving problems that we spend arguing about them, we'll be done." and there was silence and respect and a new direction. And this woman brought what? Clarity to the meeting. And sometimes you can ask women, sometimes when we sit silence, it's not because we can't speak or not because we don't have answers. Sometimes it's just because many women were raised to sit quiet when men talk. But that is no longer the case. That's no longer the case. You can look at young girls across Africa and across the globe. So, but there are challenges that are still holding many women back, because when we are counting these women in leadership globally, they are just a handful, and the rest of the leadership global positions are still held by men. The gender disparities are still real, and they are still loud. And the question is, what are the main barriers? What are the main barriers? And the truth is, limited access to capital. You will be shocked that men still have more access to capital than women, both in Africa and globally. And number two, outdated cultural expectations. You know, expectations that used to be on our mothers, on our grandmothers. Some people still find it right to put those expectations on our daughters and African leaders of today. And it makes absolutely no sense. And those expectations of a woman's place and where a woman should be or where men should be in society, that influences women's ambitions to rise to certain positions, are all outdated. So male-dominated political structures, so across Africa and globally, we still see that all political structures, except for the shining stars of countries like Namibia and a few other pockets globally, women are still in the back seat when it comes to politics. And educational gaps, I mean, women are more likely, especially in Africa, to be less educated than men. And yet the trends are changing, but it's still going to take time to fully transform this space. And you look at lack of mentorship, because we don't have a lot of women that are in successful global leadership positions. The number of women leading leadership compared to the number who can give leadership, there is still that huge gap. And another important factor is underrepresentation in certain sectors. So when you look at women are capable, but certain sectors you just find pockets or even no representation of women. So women are capable, the systems around them need to reform. The systems need to change. And the question is, what needs to change? There need to be increased funding for women-led businesses, support for women's political participation, changes in discriminatory laws where they still exist, and they do in many parts of Africa. Introduce leadership pipeline for girls, training girls and helping girls to grow up to become leaders from a very young age. Build a culture that values women at the top. Values women at the top, or not feel that women at the top are arrogant, women at the top don't want to respect their husbands, and all this kind of negativity that we hear sometimes around women in top leadership. And let's get to my final reflection on this. African women have always been leaders from the days of our great-grandmothers, mothers, and our generation, from the queens to warriors to mothers to CEO. The world is only now discovering what we've known all along. When African women lead, transformation is inevitable. So in closing, I just want to thank you for joining me today on the Global Transformation Forum podcast, where we talk all things transformation, whether you are looking at transformation in government, transformation in the private sector, transformation in culture, sector transformation in different business areas, everything transformation. You have a topic you want to talk, you want to show up on any of our podcasts, please get into the chat, DM us, connect to us, and let's keep the conversation going. If this was inspiring to you, share it with every woman who dreams big. And this is Dr. Vivian. I remain your voice that matters. I remain your leadership. I remain your leader, or your voice in leadership matters. I will be here to remind you that your voice matters, your leadership matters. Africa needs you. And I will see you in the next episode.